In this video, I want to take a look at the new Claude 3.7 model, and we're going to use the dashboard artifact. So the artifact comes up on the right-hand side of the screen, and it writes some code and then executes that code. And that is brilliant for creating a data dashboard. So what we're going to do is just use a simple healthcare data set. So it's going to be about heart disease. And then we're going to just instruct Claude to create this dashboard for us. It's beautiful for presentation, and I think it's really engaging. Let's have a look at Claude 3.7 Sonnet with a dashboard. So I'm using the web interface. I'm at claude.ai. I've logged into my account. And just to be absolutely clear, this is the paid model. So I am paying $20 a month out of pocket for this model. So right down below, we see Claude 3.7 Sonnet. If I click on that, you see I've clicked on using the most intelligent model yet. Who knows, by the time you're watching this, 3.7 might be in the distant past. So take that for what it's worth. You can also see this new model that we introduced. It says extended best for math and coding challenges, so you might want to try that out. So here's the CSV file, comma separated value spreadsheet file. Look in the description down below. You'll find a link to where you can download the file for yourself. And I've just uploaded this file. So right there, you see your little icon there, upload files. And this is the CSV file that I've uploaded. So I've already done this. I don't want you to wait around and watch me type, etc. And so this was my prompt. Show me the list of all the column headers. So this is a tidy data set. By that we mean every row is an observation and every column is a variable. And so the column headers, in other words, those values in the first row for each of the columns, those would be the variable names. And Claude comes back. I'll help you analyze the CSV file. Looking at the CSV information provided, here are the column headers: age, sex, chest pain type, resting BP, cholesterol, etc. Would you like me to analyze any specific aspect of the data set? For example, I can calculate summary statistics, explore the distribution of categorical variables, create visualizations, etc., and then create a dashboard. And that's really what I want to do, create this dashboard. Because what I just envisioning is, someone who wants to get involved in data analysis, you do have access to some interesting data. You want to get into research. If you haven't studied biostatistics or statistics, it's very difficult to get into this. Today is just so much easier. So let's just use Claude here and just explore this very easy data set that is actually available everywhere. But again, link in the description down below. So my interest here would be in this final column 12. It says heart disease. That's a binary variable. In other words, there's two possible outcomes. It's a variable with a nominal level of measurement. There's two categories or two levels. And so I'm just inquiring, what are the unique or distinct, I can also say, values of the heart disease column? Now, it was encoded when someone collected this data with a 0 and a 1. And Claude is clever enough to understand what that 0 and 1 means. That's just an encoding of the two sample space elements for this variable. No heart disease and heart disease. And that's exactly what Claude does here. And it says that the 0 occurred 410 times in the data set and 1 occurred 508 times. And we see the proportions of the relative frequencies there, 44.7, 55.3%. And it guessed the following. It said 0 was the encoding for no heart disease and 1 was the presence of heart disease. And that's absolutely correct. That's how the data was encoded when the data was captured. And I say, thank you and please. Now, when I tend to use Claude, I'm not, don't usually use thank you, please, because one of the problems for Claude for me is the small context window. So you really, have to save wherever you can, because it's just one of the smallest context windows out there. So you have to save your tokens. But anyway, for this very trivial example, I've put in my customary thank you and please. So thank you. Please create a dashboard of the spreadsheet file. It should show every explanatory variable. So let's just go back. In case you don't know, this I would see as my response variable, the outcome variable, and all the others are explanatory variables. Can they explain why someone has heart disease or does not have heart disease? So those are my explanatory variables. And that's why I write, it should show every explanatory variable for each of the unique values of the response variable or the column heart disease. And so this would be comparative summary statistics. I'm going to compare summary statistics and data visualization for each of those explanatory variables separately for each of the categories in the heart disease. So I want to see it separately for those with and without heart disease. So use no heart disease and heart disease for the two classes of the heart disease column. I don't want it to write 0 and 1 because it's kind of meaningless. Also show the mean, standard deviation, median, and interquartile range for each of the numerical variables and the frequency for each category of the categorical variables. So if my explanatory variable is numerical, I want those summary statistics. And if it's a categorical variable, well, then I want these joint frequencies. Use proper English terms for each explanatory variable because, as you can see there, it just uses things like resting ECG or fasting BS. And I want, see, are you clever enough to realize that is fasting blood sugar? And so let's see what it comes up with. It says, I'll create a comprehensive dashboard to visualize the heart disease dataset, showing statistics for each, etc., etc. It does its analysis. And then when you do this live, an artifact will open towards the right. But once you've done it, the artifact is still there. And I can just click on this artifact, and this is what it would look like when you run it. And look at this beautiful dashboard. So as it runs, you'll see the code. And if I hit on the code, there's all the code. You can download this file and see if you can do something with it. Let's just go back up to the top. And what you can see, it's using React. So JavaScript here for creating of this dashboard. I can hit on preview again, and then I see a preview of this. Look at that beautiful animation. It's starting with a total of 918 records. It does show that no heart disease 410 or 44.7%, and 508 or 55.3% for those with heart disease. And then on my dashboard here, look at it. I can choose the numerical explanatory variables or the categorical variables to show different ones. So let's start with the numerical, explains it there, and then it starts with the age column. It correctly guesses that, this was done in years. And then we see the summary statistics, mean, median, standard deviation, and interquartile range. And you see it for both of those, the people with no heart disease and the people with heart disease. And that's a lovely visualization. It's even interactive. When you hover over them, you'll see the differences between the two. It even gives me detailed summary statistics. And not only do I see the mean, standard deviation, median, and the interquartile range, but to calculate the interquartile range, of course, I need the first and third quartile values. So those are given for me. So now I can really start to look at this. There is definitely a difference in the mean age between those without heart disease and with heart disease. Those with heart disease, almost 5 years older. And we can see the two standard deviations, the medians, etc., as well as with the median. Look, they're much older, the group with the heart disease. A massive amount of information for you to start to understand this data. Let's look at the resting blood pressure. And you can see there's a smaller difference between the mean resting blood pressure between these two groups, 130.18 and 134.19. And again, you see the lovely summary statistics. We can go through the cholesterol. Of course, those in this instance, those without heart disease seems to have a higher cholesterol than those with no heart disease. So that's something to look into. When it comes to maximum heart rate, we see exactly the same. ST segment depression induced by exercise. Now, this one might be a little bit of a problem. How was this encoded? So we definitely have to look into this, into these values. So that's one I would keep an eye on. And then finally, the dataset contains 918, and we see a little summary of the summaries. Let's go back up to the top. Let's click on the categorical variables. And once again, look at that biological sex. For those with no heart disease, males predominated, and then with heart disease, a real, when it's just talking about biological sex or binary sex, the male's very predominant for the subset with heart disease. And we can see the contingency table here. So we see the frequencies, we see the relative frequencies, and we see the difference between those with no heart disease and heart disease. So contingency table, that's just, there for the calculation of measures of association, specifically odds ratios, and of course chi-square test or Pearson's chi-square test for independence. Chest pain type, we see separately for those with and without heart disease. Same for the fasting blood sugar. Now that was a categorical variable, so it was either no or yes. I suppose for abnormal and normal fasting blood glucose levels. Same goes for resting ECG. There were 3 categories there. I don't particularly like that it's pie charts, and of course I think you can say that in our little prompt there. Do not use pie charts, rather use stacked bar charts or something like that. But I think as far as this goes, this is a beautiful dashboard. As you can see, you can publish it, you can download it, you can share it, etc. You can also just save it. this for me is in a project and I've added it to my project, so it's persistent. I can always just come back to this artifact, and I think for presentation this is absolutely fantastic. Will I double check this work if I want to do real analysis? Absolutely I will, but I'm guessing this is going to be very good. After it gives you this dashboard, it also gives you some information about the creation of that dashboard, and it's just then also showing you the English terms as I requested that it used instead of using the column header name. So that's fantastic. It gave me a little note here, even though I'm paying good amount of money every month. It says Claude hit the max length for a message and has paused its response. You can write continue to keep the chat going. And so I waited a while and just kept on going. So there's my waste of tokens again, thank you and please, but please create a box and whisker plot of the age column values for each of the categories of the heart disease column. Tells me a little bit of the insight into what it created, but let's click on the artifact again. As I say, when you do this live, the artifact will just pop up. And look, I think this is a fantastic box and whisker chart. I mean, this is just ready for presentation. And we can see that there's some suspected outliers in the age of those with heart disease. Otherwise, we can see the median, first and third quartile values, the median, as I said, and then the in the extremes, we get the minimum and maximum. Of course, this on the heart disease column, this 35 would not be the minimum because there's suspected outliers below that. So this would be 1.5 times the interquartile range less than Q1. You get all your summary statistics there, an explanation there, and you get the added explanations here just in the normal prompt response. I think, again, you can look at the React code there. Let's just scroll up to the top. Yes. But the preview is what we want to see with this artifact. I think this is absolutely fantastic. We're not coding or anything. Again, thank you. Please create a similar box and whisker plot for the resting BP, resting blood pressure, just to show you a bit of skewed data here because there's lots of suspected outliers in the upper end. It gives me the information for the two groups. I can compare that. I can read the interpretation. There's even more interpretation here on the left-hand side and the response. It's absolutely great. Now, I'm just going to use, because of these these suspected outliers, etc. I'm going to use a non-parametric test, and I just really want to see, so I didn't go out and test for the assumptions for the use of a parametric test. I've just decided I'm going to go for a non-parametric test, and I wanted to see what would Claude do with these artifacts. Can it do this? So I said, thank you, please conduct a Mann-Whitney U-test to determine if there's a difference in the resting blood pressure between those with and without heart disease at the 5% level of significance. And Claude says, that's fine, I'll conduct a Mann-Whitney U-test for you. It goes through the steps of the Mann-Whitney U-test, gives me all the summary statistics and the interpretation there. As we can see, the Mann-Whitney U-test results indicate a statistically significant difference in the distribution of resting blood pressure between patients with and without heart disease. So you've got those summary statistics, you've got the data visualization, and here you've got the results of a proper statistical test to determine if there's a difference between this resting blood pressure between these two groups. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I want to also have a quick look at creating some visualization for two categorical variables. So I said, please create a stacked bar chart to show the relative frequency of the categories in the sex column for each of the categories in the heart disease. So I want those the charts to be right to the top. So I want it to be expressed in relative frequency. So these joint frequencies. Let's have a quick look at that. And I think I must have reached some kind of limit because clicking on this does not open the stacked bar chart, but it is there, and I'm sure if I just give it a moment or do a reload, this is going to pop up. So let me just do that, and with the magic of editing, I'll be right back. Now, as you can see, as luck would have it, it's really decided that I should wait a long time before I get back to this page. And yes, you are definitely going to see these problems. But as you can see, I think this is absolutely fantastic, creating this dashboard. I wouldn't probably go as far as doing all my analysis as I've done here, creating all these plots. I'll, create a separate prompt for each of these, just a separate chat for each of these. But I think this is a real step forward. Claude 3.5 Sonnet with this ability grade dashboards. So you're just getting started. You've got a data set, you've got a spreadsheet, and you want to understand this data. You don't know where to start. This is a fantastic way. So if you can, give Claude a go. And generate these, if you can, generate these artifacts using Claude 3.7 Sonnet. I think it's well worth the investment.